Hello my dear fellows, it's Guaca, and after experiencing the amazing journey of the first Diablo game, I wanted to continue my journey. Now, Diablo 2 is another game that I think pretty much everybody knows. It's regarded by some as Blizzard's greatest game, and one of the best, if not the best, action RPG of all time. I'm curious to see how it builds not only upon the original gameplay of Diablo 1, which I'll be directly comparing it to, but the legacy and the lore of that world too. Now, for this video, I'll be playing through the Diablo 2 remake, which is Resurrected, and this time, I'm not alone. I'm going to be going through this game with a buddy because I wanted that classic multiplayer experience. Everyone, say hello to Mr. Merek himself.
Thanks for having me, Guaco. Hey everyone. As someone who started with the Diablo series at Diablo 2, I'm excited to revisit the game via the remake, and while I still have a fondness for the classic version of the game, I cannot wait to see what the remake will bring. I'm glad to share this experience with someone new to the Diablo franchise as well. Thanks again, Guaco.
Alright, well, with our introductions out of the way, let's delve into the world of Diablo 2. Diablo 2 takes place not long after the events of the first game. If you haven't played the first game or watched my video on it, please check it out if you want more context, but let me give you the quick rundown just so you're all caught up. In Diablo 1, you play as this hero who comes to Tristram. He descends into the Cathedral of Tristram, fights Lazarus, eventually slays Diablo. And upon defeating him, we discover that the son of the king that was captured and we were looking for him during the game was actually the host of Diablo, and he had the soul stone implanted in him. And in a desperate attempt to keep Diablo at bay, the player character places the soul stone inside his forehead and begins to travel east to find a cure of any kind. And with that brief explanation out of the way, let's get into Diablo 2, which begins with a cutscene of no characters we are familiar with already. An old man locked inside a room along with a hooded figure. We get our first look at an archangel named Tyrael, who has come to ask this old man named Marius, who seems to harbor some shame about the past events after escaping a monastery that was overtaken by evil. He starts to go into details about meeting a wanderer. These cutscenes are the next evolution of storytelling, man. The intense, still almost novel-like way the characters talk, now combined with these amazing animations, are just a joy to watch. I'm sure by now, you must have guessed that the Wanderer is in fact the original hero with the soulstone implanted in him from the first game. Seeing this character that you made, that you grinded and leveled with, maybe even grew up with, attempting to contain the evil, and he's now just reduced to nothing, is just a depressing but weirdly motivating feeling. You want to see his story through, find the Wanderer, and do whatever you can to prevent the evil from breaking out. Even just that small cutscene in the tavern, showing what could be unleashed upon the entire world, is enough to make you realize this is a serious threat, much bigger than the first game. Diablo 2, before any gameplay is even started, has established that this adventure is not going to be for the faint of heart, and I'm all for it.
Why do things happen as they do in dreams? All I know is that when he beckoned, I had to follow him. From that moment, we traveled together east, always into the east.
For this playthrough, I was tossing between a few different class types, but I decided to go for Paladin yet again. This is mainly because, well, being a Paladin in a game like this is just too fitting, and I also kind of want to mirror my original character from Diablo 1. I feel like that's what he would have wanted. Jumping straight into the world, we arrive at the rogue encampment, our first in many stops on our journey to fight Diablo. We immediately meet Warif, who informs us of a Dark Wanderer, our old friend who went through the monastery nearby. I guess our role in this game is to follow the Dark Wanderer and catch him before the evil is unleashed. Just from this first conversation, you can tell that this game is going to be a much bigger scale than the previous one. The atmosphere is also quite different. Tristram was a really intense, oppressive atmosphere, but this place seems almost more military-like, and it's more of a small part of a big picture. This town, along with the others in Diablo 2, follow the same format as Tristram. You got your potion sellers, blacksmiths, lore, and quest givers, all with their own stories and gossip to tell. Now moving on from the leader of the camp, Akara is a high priestess whose home was corrupted by an evil demoness called Andariel. That is the main focus of the first act. If we can find and defeat Andariel, we can push onwards through to the east and continue our search for the Wanderer. Our first task before any of this though, of many tasks, is to prove ourselves to the townsfolk and find the den of evil which is corrupting the land nearby and to clear it out. This serves as our introductory quests, our ways to get familiar with the mechanics of D2. Now just from exploring and taking our first steps outside of the rogue encampment, you realize how much more refined the mechanics of Diablo 2 are compared to the first game. Firstly, The speed of the game has gone up dramatically. You know, the slow, methodical, and almost desperate attacks of the original game have been upgraded to a fast-paced combat with way more enemies and way more impact, but it still has that desperation, especially in boss battle moments, which I really like. The HUD itself as well is quite similar to the original, except it has some more information. The main things I really like is the EXP bar, as well as quick access to even more skills. In Diablo 2, you have a huge array of skills to choose from for each class, and I could spend maybe even a couple hours discussing every class, their abilities and progressions, but I think it would be great for you to experience them yourself, as there's so many great ways to build your character. I'm just going to talk about the description of my character, the Paladin. He's focused on aura abilities and buffing attacks, and nullifying elemental damage and status effects. This is mainly because Merek is a necromancer, who has an army of skeletons at the drop of a hat, so I figured, hey, why focus on buffing myself and doing big damage when I can buff an entire army? I was still pretty tanky though, so I could charge in with the scalies and drop back to heal myself, or change status effects if I needed to. Our duo team actually worked great. You'll see our plays and I'll discuss myself a little more as we go throughout the game, but that's the gist of how my character worked. You may not notice as well, but Diablo 2 is procedurally generated like the previous game. This allows for a lot of replayability, and I'm already on my second playthrough at the time of recording this. I did have one major issue though, which is that if you disconnect or something from a multiplayer world, your map progress is going to be reset, meaning if you just spend a bunch of time exploring everywhere and you DC, you're going to have to do it all again. Back on track to the main story though, we head into the Den of Evil and begin clearing out monsters down there. It's simple enough, and honestly the threat I felt in the original isn't here as much. The gameplay is still very satisfying and super rewarding, and I actually prefer the faster pace of D2. The cave as well looks great in both the original and the new style. You've got your typical level 1 enemies here, zombies, goblins, skellies, and these shaman guys who revive monsters and provide us some interesting mix-up in gameplay, and some big old trolls too. We finish and clear the cave easy enough, leading us to complete our first quest. Each act, by the way, has 6 quests, and I'll be covering most of them during this video, but if I miss a couple, don't complain, play the dang game yourself. And moving on from the leader of the camp Azara, we talk to the leader of a militia, Kasha, who has reported an abomination in the graveyard. This is our first boss of the game, whose name is Bloodraven, a captain who is sadly corrupted by Andariel, and we have to put her to rest, similar to King Leoric in the first game. It was at this moment I kind of started to understand the scale of Diablo 2. We had to explore to find this monastery, with barely any guys to show up this way. Going around this expansive countryside, seeing the decrepit houses and evil everywhere paints a picture of the people that used to live here, and your mind wanders and you think what happened to them. Finally arriving at the monastery after seeing these horrific sights, the scene here is so dramatic. I love the huge gates and the really intense atmosphere. The boss though is nowhere near as threatening as the Butcher, which is the first boss from the first game, but I guess having an army of skeletons makes anybody brave. She is fun to fight though, and it didn't feel as big of a scale or an impact, but I do love that this boss, even though it's another tutorial for bigger fights, is woven into the world and lore. The death animation for this character too is great, and adds more mystery to the world.
Sisters, there was no other way.
Our next quest though, very high. That's because we are returning to Tristram. If we want to find Andariel, we need the aid of a Haradrim sage named Deckard Cain. This led us on a long goose chase to find a scroll hidden within an ancient tree past an underground passage, which the leader could decipher for us. This scroll has the order of certain stones we have to touch to open a portal to Tristram. Primarily, Diablo 2's quests are like this, and I love the way they make use of landmarks in certain areas. Knowing your quest is confined to the dark woods or an underground passage gives you, the player, a basic pathway where you find where you need to go, but leaves enough out that actively encourages you to explore. So when you find these areas and landmarks you need to use, it's really satisfying. Now with our scroll deciphered, we head into the Circle of Stones, open the portal, and head to Tristram. And what we see is worse than I'd imagined.
What a tragic end to Tristram.
I love the use of the original town song here. In the original game, the song felt foreboding and creepy. And even though the song hasn't changed, now that the town is burning, the song is filled with so much more loss. I felt an obligation to clean the streets of Tristram, and my heart broke when I realized one of the monsters' names was Griswold, the man who forged our sword in the original game. I also found Wirt's Pegleg, the young ambitious merchant, but unfortunately, I did not find the rest of them. Luckily though, there was one survivor held up by a cage, Deckard Cain, and after freeing him, we head back to the village and heed his words. Man, it is like seeing an old friend again. Saving Mr. Cain gives us a little glimmer, a little spark of hope. and our hope continues to grow as we get more quests that begin to expand the scope. Our first step into the monastery, which was talked about earlier in the game, is to find the blacksmith's hammer, which will forge us some better weaponry. Diablo 2 loves to do this. Send you to the general boss area, letting you dip your toes in, and you go inside and learn the environment and the story a little bit. And the encampment did not paint justice enough for this area. There is blood everywhere, dead bodies and abominations roaming the halls. This entire place has a horrific, sinister atmosphere that makes you feel like the travesty of the monastery is far from over, and in fact, is just the beginning. These dungeons are great to explore, and they still have that awesome charm from the first game which encourages you to explore every inch of the place. While it's easy to rejoin another world and continue to grind, something I didn't get to do in the original, I still felt the urge to level up as much as possible so I'd be best prepared for anything the game threw at me. You've got those reviving enemies, lots of different elemental attacks, swarming tactics by enemies, and much more. Since the game is so fast paced, it throws a lot more at you, rather than drip feeding you. Once we get the hammer though, we return and get our weapon imbued with magic. Oh, actually haven't talked about weapons much yet. The armor and weapon system is very similar to the original game. You've got your durability and small inventory space to manage, but you've got an actual sword which holds money and items between all of your characters. You've also got more stats and things to mess around with which can enhance your builds, but that's the great part of Diablo. Especially playing with friends, you can trade and exchange however you want in this game, which makes experience feel more like a combined effort. When you find an item your friend needs, you make them more powerful and then they help in the long run. It's great. With our weapons upgraded, our way is now clear. Head into the depth of the catacombs, fight the Queen Demon Andariel, and stop this outpost of evil from becoming a permanent bastion.
My work here is finished.
Now so far, Diablo 2 has been a lot easier. I'm sure the skeletons help, but I've only died twice at this point. Not that that's a bad thing, mind you, it's just a very different experience. I feel like they've tailored it more to have a better curve of difficulty to prepare you for the next act. But with Andariel defeated, it's time to continue towards the lands of Lut Gholein, where the Dark Wanderer is next.
The dreams return, but these were clearly not my own. I beheld the vision of a great man, the mage, Talrasha. You were there too, Tyrael. I remember seeing you in my dream. His brethren had cornered a great demon, Baal, Lord of Destruction, who had been set loose upon the world. They attempted to imprison the demon within a sacred stone. Yet when their attempts failed, Talrasha selflessly volunteered to contain the demon within himself, completing the prison. He instructed his brethren to bind him within a tomb, buried under the sand, there to wrestle with the demon for all eternity.
Now you know what I seek, Marius. This is my brother. Sleep now. We set out with the dawn.
The next morning, we walked over the hill toward Lut Gholein. I had no idea then of the horrors that were in store for me there.
Lut Gholein is a completely different biome from what we've seen in either Diablo games. It's a harsh desert landscape where only the most fierce and deadly creatures call home. This section of the game is regarded as one of the worst parts of Diablo 2's game, primarily due to the enemies you have to fight here. Our first dungeon is actually a delve beneath the town itself. A creature known as Radament feeds on whoever travels below, and it's our goal to prove ourselves to this community by vanquishing this foe. I'm gonna have to praise Diablo for continuing to follow this formula of basic quests with a lot of weight to them. Not only is this creature deadly, it is under the town, a direct threat to everyone and our journey to the east. much like the mirroring of going down into Tristram in the original game. The enemies below are various types of skeletons and mummies, which cast poisonous spells at us. This is the first of many status effects and debilitations Act 2 throws at you, which is why building my paladin as an aura user was so important. Being able to reduce and maybe even nullify these effects made Act 2 pretty engaging for me personally. After this part, the majority of Act 2 flows quite smoothly, with each quest passing and relating to each other in conjunction. Our goal is to find the Tomb of Baal, a demon that was sealed away in order to prevent catastrophe. This is actually the brother of Mephisto and Diablo, and if he's freed, that's good for no one but the Wanderer. Now, how do we even find this tomb? Luckily, Cain has got a good idea. We find a Heraldric cube, and with it, we can reforge the Heraldric staff, which unlocks the tomb where Baal is kept. If we can get there first, before the Wanderer, and defeat him, and take the Soul Stone before the Wanderer makes it into his full abominated brother, that will be a huge blow to the enemy. This is the majority of Act 2. We scour the desert searching for the right tomb of Tal Rasha, and hopefully we can find a piece of the staff along the way to put into the Heraldric cube. I've heard from a bunch of people they really dislike this part of Diablo 2, especially the setting, and I don't think it's anywhere near as people make it out to be. The tombs are really fun to explore and are a bit different from anything I've seen in the series so far. And I think by having each act be a specific theme and biome, it really allows for each area and dungeon to shine. If they all fell into the category of generic caves and ruins, I don't think Act 2 would have been anywhere near as impactful. Knowing that Diablo is out there in the wastes, looking for the same thing you are, and considering the possibility of maybe even crossing paths with them before you're ready, it's terrifying. But you have to do what a hero does and keep pushing forward. It's got that sense of desperation again that the first game had. You can't afford to lose a single second. The only real issue I did have in Act 2 was that the game did chug a bit here and there, but if I ever had a big issue, I'd just switch to old school graphics if I needed the frames. Otherwise, the game ran pretty great. Next, I delved into a lair of maggots and retrieved the first staff piece. Then a freaking eclipse happened and I had to solve it by going into a den of vipers to make the sun shine again, which was really cool. I know I keep bringing up these examples of go kill boss, but seriously, I wish more games created side quests that impacted the main story and actual world more like Diablo has been doing. Back to the main story though, once we have created the staff, it's time to find the Tal Rasha's tomb, where Baal is held. The way to find this? By descending into the arcane sanctuary within town. Since we won the respect of everyone by helping out so much, we are granted access into its depths, and in the hopes we can find the location of the tomb. I really did not know what to expect when descending towards the sanctuary, but I was genuinely shocked by the inside of the portal.
This surely is the product of a twisted mind.
This arcane sanctuary is literally a perfectly painted picture outside of a classic Dungeons and Dragons adventure. It's a super cliche lair for a distraught wizard, and it's really cool when fantasy games implement space into dungeon designs. It gives it an almost sci-fi feel, which makes the wizard feel more mystical and otherworldly and more powerful. The sanctuary is still mapped out like any dungeon, but it feels so open due to the lack of walls. Me and Merek spent a good 40 minutes exploring every nook and cranny of this place, mainly because I wanted to see everything, but also because instead of turning left where the boss was, I trusted my gut and we went right where there was nothing but enemy after enemy. But we got some good loot, and more EXP is always nice. Enemies can actually respawn and you can join friends' games, so it's really easy to level yourself up more than you need to. This game really made me feel like me and Merek were just a cheese grater grinding through enemies though. It was really satisfying for sure, and on the other end, there was definitely some tough bosses, which we'll get to in a bit. In the end, we found the Turn Wizard, killed him, well, more like cheese grated him, and read his journal, which revealed the real symbol that hangs above the tomb of Tal Rasha. With that in place, we can head through the Canyon of the Magi and search for the tomb and place the Heraldric staff where it's needed, which opens the sealed chamber. This guy is really difficult. Me and Merek wiped a lot on this guy. I really needed some resist frost, which I didn't have at the time because most of Act 2 we were getting poisoned and lightning, but it's fine. Thanks to the power of portals, we did a bunch of cheesing and would basically jump in and out of portals, getting healed where we needed. It's a bit cheeky, but when you're facing literal hell, I think some portals is fair game. Dying in Diablo 2 is pretty brutal. It's not like the first game where you can save scum. If you die, you don't just get a game over screen or lose a little bit of money. You drop all your money and all the gear you're currently wearing. Where does this gear go, you might ask? On the spot that you died. So, if you're like me and Merek fighting this creature, your body is next to a boss that will one-shot you with no armor, meaning you have to run butt-ass naked in, grab your gear, hightail it back to the portal before he one-shots you. It was pretty frustrating, but weirdly, it brought out our teamwork. Having to time going in to keep the opponent from generating health and not losing our life savings was interesting. It was tough, but in the end, the skeleton army reigned supreme. Now it's time to destroy Baal, but instead, we find Tyrael. He went ahead of us, trying to stop Baal from being awoken by Diablo, but he failed, all because of that old bastard. Instead, he was imprisoned inside the tomb, and thanks to us, he is now free and will continue to pursue them. From Act 2's ending, we are starting to get an idea of what might be going on here. The hero from Tristram of Diablo 1 is traveling across the land, but they are no longer searching for a cure, a release from Diablo. They are Diablo. Their humanity is nothing more than the remaining husk being dragged along by Diablo's will, and its goal? To reunite with its brethren and take over the world. The stakes are now set, and we are already behind schedule because we are chasing the Wanderer, and we haven't even caught up with him yet. This race against time really puts you into the shoes of the world. If you played the original, you know the travesty of Tristram. Imagining that everywhere? That's not something anybody would want. Since we finish in Lut Gholein, we travel further east, across the ocean to Kurast, where even more diabolical evils await.
He moved with demonic speed, and then you appeared.
Stop! The beast contained herein shall not be set free, not even by you. Just ensured the doom of this world. You cannot even begin to imagine what you've set in motion this day. Go to the Temple of Light in the eastern city of Kurast. There you will find the gate to hell opened before you. You must find the courage to step through that gate, Marius. Take the stone you hold to the Hellforge, where it will be destroyed. Now run. Take the stone and run!
Now the town of Kurast is an ancient city which is smack bang in the middle of this super dense jungle. In this area, our goal is to now stop the other brother, Mephisto, from reviving. How do we do this when we failed before? Well, Kane's got a different approach. This time, we're going to find the body pieces of a priest that defied Mephisto, transmute his essence into a flail, which we can use to destroy an orb, which opens the way to Mephisto. And this whole premise, I gotta tell you, is so metal. I never thought I'd play a game where you gather the parts of a priest in order to create a weapon. That is just metal as hell. This is Act 3, searching for the parts of this warrior through the jungle. And these quests you can probably see are very, very similar, if not the exact same premise as Act 2. We find some pieces of something to transmute to unlock a pathway to a boss. But because each biome, quest, enemy types, and village are so different to the other one, you really don't mind it. And I really appreciate how Diablo has done this. It's taken all the parts and gameplay loops of the first game and just scaled it up. You know, when I first descended into Tristram in the original, I liked how the floors and enemies slowly started twisting into more manifestations that closely resembled hell. And the second game follows this. We've gone from destroyed farmlands to an arid desert to now towers full of cultists. Each act as well to get through these parts has required us to do more gruesome and drastic things to keep our mission going. And once again, those words pop into my head. Desperation and thinking about what could have been, before the Wanderer came through and led all to despair and devastation. As we crawl out of the sewers, finally holding the last piece of Colleen, we can transmute his essence into the flail and set off for the deepest part of the temples.
The Lord of Hatred shall darken the world no longer.
This has given us a great victory. We have destroyed one of the three, and we now have his soul stone. But this is nowhere near over. Everything is building to this, the final act, where it all goes exactly where you think it's going.
What I saw then was not meant for mortal eyes.
The gate stands ready. Now, my young brother, the time has come to assume your true form. Arise, Diablo, Lord of Terror. You are the harbinger of our return, Diablo. Send forth your terror into hell.
Act 4 drops us not into the bowels of hell, but in the last bastion against it, the Pandemonium Fortress. This is actually our last town, our last stop before we truly descend. Tyrael is waiting for us here to guard us to victory. He tells us that this little bastion has been used by champions for eons. Being in this place almost brings a sense of camaraderie, like you're walking in hallowed halls, and just by being here, you've proven yourself a worthy adversary against evil. Before we can confront the final boss though, we have a couple objectives. Of course, we need to destroy the Soulstone of Mephisto in the Hellforge to make sure he can never return, and to save Tyrael's trusted commander, who has been turned into an abomination. It gives us a chance to level up a few times before the last confrontation, and that gives us a great exploration experience. This land is definitely my fave part in all of Diablo 2. It reminds me a lot of the Heart of Mordor from Lord of the Rings. It feels as though no normal life can grow here, and if you drank water from here, it would be poisonous. Everything here is dark and scorched, devoid of anything natural. Despite it being near the end of the game, we still have some great lore tidbits before the final showdown, including quite a revelation from Izul, Tyrael's trusted commander who we freed.
You was a fool to have trusted me. You see, it was I who told Diablo and his brothers about the Soul Stones and how to corrupt them. It was I who helped the Prime Evils mastermind their own exile to your world. The plan we set in motion so long ago cannot be stopped by any mortal agency. Hell itself is poised to spill forth into your world like a tidal wave of blood and nightmares. You and all your kind are doomed.
Just as you begin to think you've got some hope, you've got the situation under control, you find that it was already set in motion. He describes it as a tidal wave, that there's nothing we can do to stop it. This is a point where many would give in to despair, but not us. We've come too far for this. Descending into the River of Flame, which is about as classic as you can get, we find the Hellforge, crush the stone. With the stone now crushed, we can weave our way into the Chaos Sanctuary, a twisted place, where the final boss waits for us again.
Not even death can save you from me.
This fight is a huge upgrade from the first one. He's a lot more offensive and has a huge toolset to deal with whatever the player has going on. You're gonna stand far away? Fine, he's got lightning, lots of allies, he can hit the ground with huge flame attacks and wipe them all out in an instant. It was also at this point that my game kept on disconnecting from the server, which was incredibly frustrating. But I actually put my own twist on it, imagining it was actually the boss himself that was booting me from the game, trying to push the limits of everything. But me and Merek worked as a duo. I would run in, distract him, and keep it chipping away at his health while Merek reforged his army. Then I would exit, recharge myself, and we would charge in together to keep swinging at him, hoping I didn't disconnect at a crucial point. This battle, while it was maybe only 10 minutes or so, definitely extended by the connection issues, felt like forever. This was truly the test of my limits, both in terms of gameplay and my own personal frustration. But it was all worth it to see the Lord of Terror slain.
Let Diablo's death end the reign of the three.
Now, with Diablo gone, this should mark our victory, right? Mephisto has also been destroyed with the Hellforge. But there's an issue. Someone and something is missing.
I heard later that he was defeated. And that the Soul Stones were destroyed in Hellforge. All except one.
Oh, I failed, Tyrael. I couldn't do as you asked. I couldn't enter that gate. Forgive me, Tyrael. Forgive me.
Marius, give me the stone, and all is forgiven. Give it to me, Marius.
Take it. Take it, take it. I'm glad this is finally over, Tyrael. Look what the stone has done to me.
You haven't failed, old man. You've done exactly as you were meant to do. However, I am not the Archangel Tyrael.
Well, no. No, 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 no.
You have done well, Marius. Now I think you shall have your reward.
What have I done to deserve it?
finding out that Marius, who has been our storyteller for the most part, showing us what the Wanderer is doing and what was going on for context, failing to deliver the Soul Stone to Tyrael, he was actually divulging everything to Baal instead. It's a great twist. As a player, you also feel betrayed, being mad and at the same time pitiful of Marius for failing in his quest, but kind of understanding because he's an old man and of course it's a lot to ask of him, but being unfairly slain by Baal, who now has what he needs to control the mortal realm, is a really big deal. And it seems our journey isn't over yet. We still have one more creature to battle.
Baal! The gates of Sescheron have stood for eons beyond remembrance, and you shall not breach them now. Remove your foul demons from our lands. We stand on the side of light. You shall not be allowed to reach Mount Ariat, and that which you seek will not be yours.
Well, it seems your terms are not acceptable.
This act is actually the DLC for Diablo 2, named, well, Lord of Destruction. I can't imagine what it must have been like to end the original game and have to wait to fight Baal after that ridiculous cliffhanger ending. Lucky for us, it's actually included in Resurrected. We can jump straight into Harrogath, a barbarian village atop the mountain which guards the World Stone. This actually completes the array of biomes we've seen: forests, deserts, fire and brimstone, and now snow. After descending into the depths of hell, climbing to the top of the world is a pretty awesome and fitting end. When we introduce ourselves to this town, and actually, I haven't mentioned this yet, but depending on your class, you get slightly different introductions. Another pro point towards replayability.
A paladin. I have long heard of your people. As a young warrior, I even considered the pilgrimage to Kurast. But I was younger then and foolish.
People in this village give you similar quests to Act 1. Getting the trust of the remote village is important, as any secrets we can uncover about the Wardstone will lead us to stopping Baal. Once we go outside Harrogath, the surrounding landscape is quite literally a war zone, with barricades, trenches, and enemies and allies alike, fighting amongst each other to give the rest of the world any second it can. After defeating a general and rescuing some barbarians high up the mountain, the village member tells us about a missing alchemist, Anya, who would be able to aid us in our quest if we find her. She is inside a frozen cave full of bloodthirsty yetis and other abominable creatures. It's interesting though, because as I've stated many times now, the formula hasn't changed one bit. Introduce yourself, do quests, explore caves, dungeons, and landscapes until you fight the big bad. I think it's not only the snappy combat of 2 that helps this loop be so satisfying, but also the engaging lore. Anyways, I'm reiterating myself yet again. Let's just free Anya from her frozen prison. And she reveals that Nithalak actually bartered with Baal to keep the village safe. The classic foolish deal that saves the few but endangers the many. This item that they bartered with was actually the Relic of the Ancients, which lets Baal enter the mountain with ease and obtain the World Stone. Now, it's up to us to stop Nithalak. Man, anyone else think that this whole game just feels like a D&D campaign for some reason? Definitely going to be inspiring some combat encounters for my next games.
What led you to this end?
Alas, the relic was not even there. You know what that means though? Baal is almost at the World Stone. With no other path to getting there, it's simple really. We have to undergo the trial of the Ancients ourselves in order to get to where Baal is. This brings us to my favorite fight so far in the entire Diablo series. In order to prove our worth, we have to fight the Ancient Ones, 3 barbarian warriors tasked with guarding the path to the World Stone. trials of strength and worthiness are always a huge highlight for me in any game, and the fact that it's 3 barbarians, a class which embodies strength, resilience, and power, really gets me hyped. While it's not the hardest fight by any means I've done in the Diablo series so far, the stakes of the situation, combined with the environment and the respect you feel for these warriors, makes this fight so damn memorable. I think I'm actually gonna have to be a barbarian in Diablo 3, to be honest, guys. Now, with the blessing of the Ancient Ones, it's time to ascend the mountain and confront the last of the 3.
Between the worlds will shatter. The powers of hell will flood into this sanctuary, eradicate your people and everything you've labored to build. Therefore, I must destroy the corrupted worldstone before the powers of hell take root. This act will change your world forever, with consequences even I cannot foresee. However, it is the only way to ensure mankind's survival. Go now. I have opened a portal that will lead you to safety. May the eternal light shine upon you and your descendants for what you've done this day. The continued survival of mankind is your legacy. All else will further rest from this endless battle.
I am overburdened.
After struggling so hard, it's too late. Baal has corrupted the Worldstone, and the only way to stop it now is to destroy it. Tyrael, the angel that has guided us on this long, painful journey, now goes to sacrifice himself so that humanity may live another day. And that's it. We successfully defeated the Primevals, but not without consequence. With Tyrael, a paragon of good, gone, and the Worldstone which kept everything in balance destroyed, who knows what the future holds? But the fact that we have a future, and are safe from the reign of the 3 is something at least. I'm really impressed with Diablo 2. The gameplay didn't get stale throughout the entire journey. The expanded lore revealed how the world works, but not too much, so there's room for imagination still. Upon finishing the game, you now have a rough map of Sanctuary, Tristram where everything began, then the Rogue Encampment, Lut Gholeem, Kurast, and Mount Ariast above. There's so much more to discover, and with 2 more games in the series, it seems like there's even more great lore and combat to look forward to. I really enjoyed Diablo 2's premise and execution more than the first game, and I think this is a great ending, even to the entire series if you really wanted to. You know, with any game or series, the scope and ideas always grow with each entry, and I really don't see how they can top this. But anyways, after defeating the Primevals, I think I've deserved at least a few flagons of ale and a good night's sleep. I hope you all enjoyed this dive into Diablo 2, and I hope to see you again in the future. But before I go, I gotta remind you to keep shredding. See ya!
can't really you until you've everybody's honest, good one.